in northern Mexico and the Potrero in 2003 and had it there until 2018. I developed a lot of routes there, helped put the place together as far as trails and getting infrastructure going there. And after a certain amount of time in the north, I realized that I wanted to keep expanding and looking more at Mexico. And my first trip down to central Mexico was this town right here, the first slide you see. This is called Aculco de Espinosa is the name of the town. It's a tourist town, and that rock climbing right there is a rhyolite crack climbing. That's not basalt, that's a rhyolite. My first 10 minutes in that town, not only was it beautiful weather, but I could actually understand the people when they were talking to me because it's more of a colloquial Spanish. And between the beautiful town, that rock climbing right there, and the weather, I went back to the north and sold my house in 4 days. I moved down here, moved the guide service with me for numerous reasons as well, for why I want to move the guide service. And the biggest plus about this area that I'm going to state right now is that it's 75 degrees every day. And that's huge because people in the United States, I'm here in the Northeast right now. I'm up at the Gunks, finishing up a season here of guiding and talking to people about central Mexico and driving business down towards Mexico because COVID gave us a little bit of a hiccup. So I'm driving business down south and talking to people about the areas, and like hopefully with talking to everybody here, I'll create more of a stir. So with that said, let's get started. This picture right here is a rhyolite crack climbing area. I'm going to get started just by telling you that in the background, you could see that mountain in the back that sort of looks like a bread loaf. That's called Peña de Nevado, and that is a granite peak right there. So you can see where we are right here, rock climbing. That's the prow right there, La Proa. In the background, that cliff is 50 meters tall. The cliff right in front of us right there is 30-meter tall. That is the best crack climbing I've ever seen in my life, and I have been all over the place, but that is just wonderful climbing here for numerous reasons. So let's just keep moving. All right, let's see here. Click over here. Oh, and that's Peña de Nevado right there. So make sure I didn't skip any slides, didn't. So this I'm professional rock climbing guide. I'm the owner of Southern Exposure Climbing School and Guide Service. I think I've covered pretty much all these. I've been developing routes in Mexico since 2003. I've developed routes all over the United States too, from Pennsylvania to New York, down to New River Gorge, Kentucky. I've developed routes out in Las Vegas. I've lived in Las Vegas for years, so I've been all over the place. The guidebooks that I've written were for the Potrero, and then I've written guidebooks for Down By Me. Wonderful thing about writing a guidebook is you really get to understand an area because I'm going from route to route and just making sure that all the information is accurate and making it accessible for people. The nonprofit all the way in the bottom, that's for young adults with autism. I started a nonprofit here in Mexico because children, young adults with autism, it's different when you're rock climbing because kids with autism, when they touch the rock, there's no difference between them and anybody else. And some of the hurdles with autism is that the children know that something's up. It's not like they're just wandering through life thinking that everything's right and good in the world. They know that there's challenges. And in Mexico, if I could take young adults out climbing and introduce them to rock climbing and show them that once they touch the rock that they have the same fears and the same any type of when they have their challenges, and then when they get through rock climbs and we all celebrate together, it's really like any other child, any other young adult. And that not-for-profit is more for connecting parents, because if I can teach parents of children with autism how to set up climbs and how to get out there and set up top ropes, then when these parents become friends and they take their children rock climbing, they're in the outdoors and they can just take their kids rock climbing. It isn't really about autism. So that's, it's really important to me as far as if I'm going to leave a legacy in this world, it's going to be about hooking up families. So they're families that go rock climbing and not families that have kids with autism. So as we can keep moving, the two books that I wrote, La Concepcion, that's the rhyolite crack climbing right near my house. They're in Aculco de Espinosa, and then Peña de Bernal. These are the two areas that are right near my house. And then Hilotepec is the third area, which isn't in, I didn't write a book for that. There's a book that's written. I'm trying hard to get a hold of it, and seeing about putting these La Concepcion and Peña de Bernal also on Rackup. They aren't actually physically printed. I've printed books in the past, and it just, with the future, it seems that digital is a really great way to go. The two books on the right are for northern Mexico and southern Mexico. A friend of mine put those out. They're about 10 years old now. They're a fantastic book to have on Mexico. If you were to buy books on the whole entire country, those would be the two books that you were going to buy. They're outdated. The information is old, but the directions to get to these places is accurate, and the pictures in those books are magnificent. They did a great job putting them together. So where they have a shortfall, because when he finally published it, there was so much development that they were already antiquated for the information. Getting there and understanding what you're going to is a huge hurdle. And that's why I put this picture here. If you were to buy anything for Mexico and have it at your house, right there on your coffee table for people to look at, those two books are wonderful. So we'll just keep on going. What we'll be covering: climbing in central Mexico, the logistics of climbing in central Mexico, getting around, the local culture there, rest day activities, and then we'll get into the question and answer session. I'm already 8 minutes in, and I want to make sure I get through everything, so I understand other people are taking time to be here with us. So I just want to keep on moving. The first thing I'm going to show everybody is Monterrey in the north is where I had my house in the Potrero. That's El Potrero Chico. That's about 4.5 hours south of Laredo, Texas. Where I am now is the three areas that you see in the south: La Concepcion, Peña de Bernal, and Las Peñas de Dexcani. Those are the three areas that are close to my house. Are they by any means the only areas? No. There's 17 different areas within 3 hours of my house. That cover all those and we would need a whole lot more than an hour. But these areas are right near my house. They're world-class areas, and I just want to give you guys an idea of where exactly, comparatively, where I am to northern Mexico. As you can see in this picture, the color differences. From Monterrey, it's brown, and where I am down by me, there's a lot of green. That's because you're driving from Monterrey down through the desert of Chihuahua, through Saltillo, down through the desert of Chihuahua, and you're coming up onto the Altiplano to get to where I live. My house in Aculco is at 8,700 feet in elevation. These are very high elevation places. It's 75 degrees every day. So it's a very nice place because the air is always fresh, it's always warm, and it's mountainous and green. I just wanted to, kind of point that out because people don't really understand the difference between the north and the south of Mexico. And I just want to give people a little bit more background than just the rock climbing. Here's another map just showing the difference between the two. From Monterrey and where the Potrero is to my house in Aculco de Espinosa, if I get up at 4 o'clock in the morning and I get on Route 57D, which is the Pan America Highway, it goes all the way through Mexico, all the way down through Central America, all the way to Brazil. It's one road that you take from Saltillo all the way down to where I live. It's a very easy and a very beautiful drive. For anybody who's thinking about making that drive, I'm a wealth of information because I've been doing it for 18 years now. This is a better picture that gives you an idea of you're going to fly in. People ask me about Mexico City because my house is close to Mexico City, but it actually is a lot easier to fly into the airport in Querétaro, Queretaro. It's a state and it's also a city. So when people want to fly in, that international airport in Querétaro is beautiful because it's not a huge airport. It lies outside of the city, the east side of the city, so you're not anywhere near the city. And to get out of that airport, get into a rental car that costs you all of $86 for a week. You can drive right to Peña de Bernal in 25 minutes. Takes me 30 because I drive really slow, but other people make it between 20 and 30 minutes. Very easy drive. one road takes you right out to the monolith. My house from Peña de Bernal is about an hour and 5 minutes to get from one to the other. Very easy drive down, right back down 57D. And then Las Peñas de Dexcani is south of me by 50 minutes. So I have three areas that are really close to my house. And this, you also see San Juan del Rio, and that's the nearest town to me, which is, for going shopping and things like that. And then Tolantango is a place that we'll talk about here in a little while too. So I try to put it on the map to give people an idea. The reason why I listed Valle de Bravo, because Valle de Bravo is a huge area, world-class for paragliders. So now more and more than ever, rock climbers are crossing over into paragliding. And I just want to give people an idea that from where I live to Valle de Bravo, which is a wonderful place to go if you've never been there. It's a lake and it's a very just beautiful scenery. Everything there is just absolutely gorgeous. So that just gives a little bit more background information. And from my place in Aculco to get the Valle de Bravo is a little over 2 hours, depending on what time you go. It could be up to 3 hours, depending on what time you want to drive. But it's it's an easy drive. There are the three areas again: Peña de Bernal, Cascada de la Concepcion, and then Peñas de Dexcani. So let's get started. Peña de Bernal, that right there is a 1,700-foot monolith. That monolith is a porphyritic granite. It's a granite monolith. There are trad climbs and sport climbs on this monolith, but I really suggest for people just to climb the sport lines, because when I get going on these trad lines, they're very dirty. They could be run out, and let's just wait on the trad lines. Let me get back there with my buddies and start climbing these things again and see exactly what goes on. That's a beautiful granitic. This is the north face of it. Why I call it porphyritic is because the grains on this are so small. It's not like a granite that you've seen before. It's a volcanic plug from a volcano that's north, 2 hours north. And the way that this comes out of the earth, there's no way to get on top of this monolith unless you're rock climbing. That is that's the Bernal side. What we were just looking at, which I can click back, that's the south side, that's the north side. There are 4 sides to this monolith, so you could run around and you could find shade all day. To walk around the monolith completely, I don't know, probably an hour. As you can see in this picture on the left, you can see that there's actually a hiking trail. And that hiking trail that you see on the left goes all the way up, and you can see where it stops in that bowl over to the right. And what makes this place great is that on the right-hand side, you can see the multi-pitch routes that kind of match up to the left edge of the monolith over left. That's the same picture, the same, routes that are going up that flat wall to the left. And the nice part is that you can do a 7 or 9 pitch climb, walk over the top, hook over and down and around, and do a long rappel and a short rappel and be down within, 15 minutes and hook up at that hiking trail and hike your way all the way back down. There's a lot to be said for being able to climb on this side doing 9 pitch routes, or on the other side doing 13 pitch routes, and being able to wrap off in less than 15 minutes. For anybody that's done anything that's long and having to wrap the line or any type of long descent, I can't tell you how much easier it is. In the time that it takes me to get off that route and walk back down, you wouldn't even be 3 pitches down in other areas, 4 pitches, and we're already drinking beers down at the local restaurant, which is right down at the bottom of the hill, very conveniently located at the bottom of this hill. So that's a porphyritic granite. In the background to the right, you can see the Sierra Gorda Mountains. This area lies right on the edge of the Sierra Gordas. So when we start talking about different areas here, you have to understand that this monolith, if you drove into the mountains about 35-40 minutes and you get into the Sierra Gordas, it isn't too long until it turns into rainforest. Hard to believe, but the mountains are big enough that the eastern slope turns to rainforest, and there's lots and lots of water. All right, so let's keep going. That would be the east side. Lots of routes over here as well. And again, with Rack Up, if you downloaded the app, you could see all the routes that are on this. And there's also a lot of room for route development. And for me, being a developer, having that access to such steep stone that hasn't been touched is also a huge draw. Lots of history here. I'm going to bounce back one more second. So there's a Via Ferrata that is right here where this plateau is. This is where we wrap down, and we wrap down right over a Via Ferrata that comes right down to this base. This is the memorial wall right here. There's routes on this wall. And I've actually put up a multi-pitch that goes all the way up to the top here. Great multi-pitch, doesn't get done a whole lot because it's hard. But I mean, it will in time as people catch on to the fact that it's really bolted well, even though it is hard, it's bolted well. So back to this Via Ferrata. 1922 is when they put this Via Ferrata up. And when people talk about doing Via Ferratas, I'm like, yeah, this was a little bit different than Via Ferratas you might be used to, because this baby's got moves. And I can't really understand what I'm talking about, but when you get up there and you start going from iron rung to iron rung and you see the distance between them, it's very, very interesting for 1922 in Mexico to have something so what would be modern, because it's the only way to get up there is by climbing. Now again, there's the eastern wall. And then again, this is the north side. And here I have pictures that are taken directly from the app and from the book that I wrote. And this shows actually just one edge of the monolith, and it gives you all the different routes here. There's single pitch routes, there's multi-pitch routes, and then it shows the trad routes that I put in red that go up these different lines up the cracks. And as I've stated, as I've tried to do actually a number of these trad routes, some go on big gear, some you get started and they're so clogged with debris and such that we back off, because to go up there and do these things is a whole job in itself to make sure everything's accurate. That right there is the west side. This is the largest concentration of hard rock climbing here at Peña de Bernal. 13s and 12s are all over this. I show just a few of the routes here in this picture, but there are numerous routes. And this route, which I'm going to take the cursor that goes up this face and it hooks up with this ridge. That's the Filo Noro-Occidental. That's the northeast ridge. And that I think is 7 pitches, 8 pitches right here. And I would consider this one to be a moderate, because there's 2 5-9 pitches. And then by the time you hit the ridge, and if you've never done a ridge climb, it is quite exciting. I like to do it for guiding because a lot of people have never been on a razor blade ridge. You'll see through this webinar that I don't really have a lot of pictures of us climbing, because I kind of wanted to save that for everybody. I could show you pictures of that ridge and you'll get an idea of exactly what's going on, but it's a lot more fun just to take people up there and have them experience for themselves. The culture in the town. Bernal is a pueblo mágico, a magic town in Mexico. That's a coveted type of town for a status, because there's got to be something in these towns that makes it really special. Here in Bernal, that's that monolith. The town is gorgeous. It's not like other towns that you might think of when you see pictures of Mexico or movies of Mexico and things such. This is like nothing you've ever seen. This town has beautiful restaurants. It's got shopping. It's got all sorts of cool stuff in it that you could spend a day. If you climb and maybe your husband doesn't, if you bring the kids and you want something to do, the wine and cheese tour in this area is fantastic. And just hanging out in town is an experience all in itself. They have museums in this town. Like I said, it's just, it's very nice. The first time I was in Bernal, I was quite impressed. On the right-hand side, the lady, that's called a skeet base. And a skeet base is a type of corn dish. And this woman has that all wrapped up. I think she's got 7 different kinds of corn that she has out there all day. Whether you want to eat corn on the cob or whether you want it in a cup, it really is amazing. I took this picture of her. We've made friends over the years because I'm there quite frequently. And when everybody comes down, we call that our appetizer. You know, you come in, you walk down to town and you get a cup of corn, and then we walk to the restaurants. And it really is quite an experience there, because she's very good at what she does. And you would think that simply putting corn in a cup, there's a lot more going on to it than that. There's another picture of Bernal on the left, and that's a picture of a woman named Wani on the right. And she was 104 years old when I took that picture. I haven't seen Wani in a few years. I'm hoping that she's 107, but she was wonderful to talk to because she grew up in that area, had never seen anything else. She is Otomi, that's Nativo. In the United States, we call them American Indians, because that is part of America, of course, from all the way down in the South, all the way through Canada. But these are Nativos. She's a Otomi Indian, and she was very, very nice to talk to. On the left again, I think that gentleman in the front might actually even be eating a skeet base there. He might even be eating corn. Gives you an idea how nice this town is. You know, that's a restaurant right there. That's what their menu is. And as you go down the line, there's lots of different restaurants in here, and they all have their specialties. Gorditas is big in this part of Mexico, and gorditas is a corn, more or less tortilla, but it's more like a pancake, and they cut it open and they stuff it full of food. And they say they're world famous there, and I'm not sure exactly if I went somewhere in Beijing, China, if they've ever heard of the Bernal, but they do say that they're world famous. Aculco de Espinosa. This is the town that I live in. This picture is the river that runs down into the crag. So you're actually going down and in when you climb here. The cliff that you can't see in the background there, that is kind of obscured by this waterfall, that's 30 meters tall. 30 meters of fun is what I. Let me let my dog out real quick. All right, sorry for the dog barking. What I'm going to do is just let you know that with this river, it's very green in this area. You could see the cows here grazing on the river, and you see the gentleman in the background. That's Jesus over in the left-hand side. And that day that I took that picture, Jesus was actually going around and picking up any garbage in the area. They are very interesting here because Jesus has adopted this place for his own, because he's been there his whole life, grazing his animals in these fields. And he feels that it's his, job just to make sure that if anybody drops any garbage, that he picks it up. Very interesting, gentlemen. These are milk cows. This is a very dairy rich area. So my town of Aculco de Espinosa is also a Pueblo Mágico, but it's because of the church in my town. Miguel Hidalgo got held up there during the Mexicans, when he was with the Mexicans, having them rise up against the Spanish. He said that the Mexica, the people of Mexico, should be being treated better than what the Spanish, how they were treating them. So they rose up and had their little revolution, and he got caught in my town and was held up there. He couldn't leave, and he was at the monastery there next to the church. And that's what makes my town very culturally rich. It's a dairy town. If you like cheese, homemade ice cream, and homemade pastries, that's what my town is all about. It's all about dairy. All right. When they say Aculco, that word literally means where the water knots. And why they say that is because they have agua dulce there, agua dulce, which is the sweet water. Then they have agua agria, which is the sour water. So for whatever reason, which I really can't get actually a solid answer on it, they do have drinking water there, because we have wells in the town that supply everybody very good water in my town. And they also have water that they just use for cleaning things and clothes and things like that people don't drink. And they call that water the sour water. They call it salt water. They say it's salty, and they say it's volcanic flows of water underneath the earth, and that is not drinkable. In the background, again, with this picture on the left, that gentleman right there is a bona fide cowboy, because people in my town who are riding horses do not have cars. He's taking his dairy cows across this lake, And I thought that was a, a beautiful picture the day I took it. I'm huge into horses, and I really like any type of livestock and any type of agriculture. That right there is Peña de Nevado in the background. So I showed you that in the first picture. That gives you another vantage point of it. This mountain right here is Nevado, the stone-faced mountain. And to circumnavigate this mountain, the peak of this mountain behind it is actually the peak. You can't see it here. Is 11,000 feet in elevation. One of my hiking days, and not too many that I go hiking because I'm a rock climber. If there's rock climbing out there, I'll hike to it. But really, as far as just going out and hiking, doesn't happen too often. But this ridge, to hike this ridge to get up to the top of this mountain, which is behind it is the actual summit. You can't see it from here. Is a gorgeous day of hiking. This picture over here is looking down from the top, looking back down at Aculco, which is the town that I live in. It's right down here. And that's Peña de Bernal, looking at it from above. It really is a wonderful place to go hang out. To get to 11,000 feet, and it takes about 3 hours to hike up there and about 45 minutes to hike back down. So it's a wonderful day hike. These trees that you see all over this mountain, these are live oak. These are huge trees that are protected. They can't be coming in and cutting these trees. They are part of reserve there, and they're the hardest oak that is known, as far as white oak, red oak, pin oak, all the different type of oak trees out there, chickpin oak, there's a lot of different types of oak. This live oak is a very hard oak tree. They also call it Spanish oak. And that's because when the Spanish came and they cut down these trees and they sent them back to Spain, they would build battleships out of them. And the reason they did that is because they were very smart. Instead of lofting cannonballs at each other when they were back in the 1500s, instead of shooting cannonballs at each other, they would just take that battleship, they would point it at the other ship, and they would just run right into it and sink it that way. It just, they were pretty wise about how they were going to wage their wars. So that's the Spanish oak right there. This is another picture that I really like. Again, this is Aculco. These right here are called swamp mahoganies. They're a beautiful tree. These gentlemen are cutting this hay by hand, loading it into their truck because they're feeding their cows or they're feeding the sheep. Those sheep are eating sheep. They aren't shearing sheep. And for mountain biking or any outdoor activities, those sheep are your best friend because anywhere they go, they mow down that grass right to the ground like a golf course. So when you're out cruising around and you're doing any type of outdoor activities, there's, if there's any rocks or anything like that, absolutely positively know it. I like to include these pictures because, again, this gives people an idea of what they're looking at when they come down to the part of Mexico that I'm from. It really is, it's just gorgeous there. This is looking down again from the mountains, and you can see a larger oak tree there to the left of the picture. And again, more just fields. It's all agriculture here. It's volcanic. Everything's volcanic. We have the rhyolite where we're climbing near my house, the porphyritic granite that's up in Bernal, and then Jalotepec is an overhanging volcanic tuff. So these are all volcanic rocks, volcanic soil, which makes the soil very rich. Here again, it's another picture of the mountains, of being out in farm areas. These farmers, again, are all Otomi, and they do not have cars. These people all have taxis that bring them back and forth to work, back and forth to the town. I would say, as far as the farmers go, maybe 10% of them have vehicles. 90% of them take the taxis back and forth. They now turn their ground over with tractors, but even with the tractors turning the ground over, they only turn over maybe 20% of the earth with tractors. Everything else is done with horses, mules, burros. They're turning with livestock again. They're turning over this land. So it really, as far as the agriculture goes here, this goes back to the United States right after World War I, before World War II, when the Industrial Revolution was happening. This is this is pretty much the same date because these guys harvest everything by hand. It really is pretty amazing. These people really, they're farmers. They don't have any time for going out and partying. They don't have any time for anything else but really playing football, soccer, and farming. That's what they do. And it's a very nice area because everybody has something happening. They're all working and they're all working for the same goal, and that's to keep their farms going. On the right is a picture of the sunset. Here at 8,000 feet, almost 9,000 feet, the sunsets here are just magnificent. Every night when the sun goes down, with the restaurants in my town, they open up all the windows because it's 75 degrees every day, and you just watch the sunset, and it really is spectacular each evening. Cascadas de Aculco, and it's Cascadas de la Concepcion, the birthplace of the water, is what they're saying. This is a great picture that I took with my drone that I had in the air, and it gives you an idea of exactly the size of this place. All these cliffs over here, about 50 meters tall. Then it goes from 50 meters around the corner, and it goes to about 25 meters to 30 meters to 32 meters with all these climbs, and then it breaks back down to 25 meters over on this. There's climbing all around, but the majority of the climbing is all through here. For me, I've probably done 40% of the climbs in this area, one by one, cleaning them, making sure that they're the grade that they say. Maybe I've done 50%, and I'm just slowly but surely going back through all these climbs and making sure that everything's accurate. So that way, when people come to town, they know what they're getting on. When I first visited this area, I climbed here 3 or 4 times, and we didn't even have a guidebook. And that's a pretty wonderful way to look at things, because looking up at cracks, you can kind of see the size of the crack, and then you can judge from there if it's hands, if it's fingers, if it's off with what you think you're getting involved with. It really is an incredible place, and you can see all of the live oaks that are down in the valley here, and the river. The waterfall is right here where you saw the picture of the cows and Jesus, and then the water comes down through, comes around, and then exit over on this side. Goes all the way down to a reservoir. That's where the river runs to. This is a beautiful place to climb because you're in the shade all day. If you're, depending on where you're climbing, you can find sun if you want it, but for the most part, we climb in the shade all day. And again, 75 degrees in the shade, crack climbing. I can't really say, put into words how beautiful that is, especially if you're used to climbing in the hot sun. That's La Proa again. And here again, that's Peña de Ñado in the background. So that gives you an idea of how this is all laid out. There's the waterfall. This time of year when I took that picture, the waterfall's just what they would consider to be barely running. They have a rainy season that starts there right around April, and it goes through to September. And that rainy season, right around 4 o'clock, 4:30 every afternoon, somewhere between 4:30 and 6, it rains every day. That's where the agriculture comes in. They know the rains are coming, they plant their fields, and that waterfall rages in the summertime. It's just raging. It's really quite a beautiful place to climb. The tranquility there is what it's all about, because you have the river running past the climbs, you have the trees that shade you, and it's just, it's just beautiful. Another picture of the La Proa, and that's where the majority of the moderates are. The way that crack climbing works, especially with rhyolite or basalt, is that when the rock cools, it fractures to a certain size. And these fractures at this canyon are really 5'10". 5'10" is the number here. There's 5'9s, there's 5'8s, there's 5'7s, there's 5'11s and 5'12s, but 5'10" is really the grade. For 5'10" crack climbing, that's really a grade where people with smaller hands can get into it, because they can get into a rattly finger situation for somebody with my hands, and then somebody with bigger hands can climb 5'10" here and get into a wider crack, and everybody can really dial in their crack climbing skills. Out of the 3 areas that I guide, this place really puts the boots to people, because it's vertical crack climbing Your feet are in the crack maybe 5% of the time, if not less. It's very technical, so it's technique driven. No two cracks are alike. So when you come here and you climb, as soon as you touch the wall until you pop at the top, it's game on. It doesn't let off. Very few of these climbs have a stance in between. So you have 30 meters of climbing. When I tell people this is world-class crack climbing and that each climb has stars on it for as far as quality grades, the reason why they're quality is because the second that you start this fight, because it's a blue collar brawl, by the time you get to the top, it's not going to let up. If you stop trying, you're going to start falling. And that makes it a very special place to climb. All right. There's a good friend of mine, Sam. He's on a 511. That 511 is as world class as you can possibly get. It goes from hands to fingers. And then at the top, it's got a mystery move at the very top that people aren't expecting. And it is just a really wonderful climb. That is one of the ones that if people come here traveling and they ask me what climbs they should get on, that would be one of the climbs that I would say. And on the right again is with the Rack Up app that I put together. It gives you all the lines of where the routes are. And with crack climbing, it's really straightforward because, if you can't figure it out with just, following a vertical crack, we got bigger problems. It's just really, really straightforward. Here's another picture of the area. And you'll see Labyrinthino, the labyrinth. On the left, you can see that I have a circle. And that is just to give you kind of an idea of how big the place is, because that little circle is giving you what the climb is on the right. And that climb is overhanging 510 plus off with. And when people tell me they love the wide, and I hear that quite frequently. When they say they love the wide, I'm like, yeah, that's my buddy Rudy on it. I'm like, why don't you come over here and see that and look at that one. And when people stand underneath this climb and they look up on it, they start to shake because that thing is so mean. And it's got great gear. Anytime you want to stop and put gear in, you can put gear any way you want on that baby. But it's mean because it's overhanging off with. There's more pictures of it again with the guidebook. It gives you the variations and it shows you with the left, you can see the overhanging nature of it with the roof stuck in the middle up high. And then on the right, you can see the original route. And then they call this a variation to go up through the overhanging off with. Wonderful climbing, but yeah, not for the faint of heart. If you're looking for the wide, that's it right there. There's Shani right there. We were doing a little bit of artistic stuff out there with her violin. And you can see her hand placed across that crack. And you can see on either side of that crack, there's nothing waiting for you. Yeah, that's off with. Yeah, when people say they like the wide, I bring them right over there. I'm like, how about that one? It is a wonderful climb. And then on the right again, there's more climbing. You can see every 4 feet, there's a different crack. And each one of those cracks is a different climb. And it's quite a concentration of hard climbing here. That's the tail end where the river exits the canyon. And looking out, you could see that it's endless amounts of first descent potential. When you look down into this valley, depending on how far you want to walk, it's going to dictate how much you want to develop and how much climbing you want to do. When people come to visit and they want to go for a nice rest day hike, we come to the canyon and I tell them just to follow the river all the way down to the reservoir, because there's trails down there because people are grazing their cows and their sheep down in that valley. So there's trails everywhere. And I say, just walk on out to the reservoir. Then when you get done, pop up on top and then just walk the top all the way back. So that way it gives you 2 different vantage points of this valley. It's very green. It's very beautiful here. The girl on the right, that's Otomi. That's their typical garb. And they come and they sell things at the canyon. And everything that they make, they're making themselves. It's all handmade goods. On the left are gentlemen that have a truck, a farmer, and they're moving. I guess I would say that's corn right there, but it didn't exactly look like corn. I'm not sure if it's sorghum or what exactly it was, but they were moving that. And I took that picture because I just thought that is just fantastic to load anything like that high and then start driving down the road. That's why I love Mexico. You can't tell if there's anybody behind you. I don't know. I don't know what they know exactly except for the direction that they're going. But what brings me to Mexico is that right there. Just the idea that people can pretty much do whatever they want. You know, I mean, it's just a farming area, and that's pretty much the norm. So I just love it there. Petroglyphs. This is down in the reservoir. These two pictures I just came upon by accident with a buddy of mine, Steve. And these were etched in there a very, very long time ago. They're very old. And when you're walking along the reservoir and you go up underneath these, what would be rock houses, if you're familiar with Kentucky or different areas that are similar, where you have huge overhanging sections of rock where the natives would have gone and been living to get out of the rain, these stone drawings are underneath these, you know, rock outcroppings, a rock house. And when I tell people on your hiking, when I send them out to the reservoir, I tell them to hook in and walk as close to the cliff as you possibly can. We just wandered upon these. If this was in the United States, these bad boys would have been protected a long time ago. In Mexico, they'll catch up. And hopefully when they do decide to, you know, do a little bit more as far as protecting things like these, this stuff will be protected as well, because they really are. So look into the past. I mean, this is amazing. The next area that we're going to talk about, which is the third area, because we're 43 minutes in. I'm right on time. Look at me. I'm right on time. 43 minutes in, Las Peñas de Dexcani. So that is at 10,500 feet in altitude, right around 10,000 feet in altitude. That's Las Peñas de Dexcani. That is the largest collection of hard rock climbing in Mexico. The hardest climbs in Mexico are in this area. There's a few 14s in there, and this is overhanging volcanic tuff. It really is this is an easy hike to get up on top of the place to see it from this vantage point. And again, this, I think, as far as I know, this is the largest collection of live oak, protected live oak in all of Mexico that surrounds this area. It really is. This is a private preserve. It's a $3 entrance fee to get in here. The Ejido, the farmers union that owns it, are very particular about keeping it beautiful, because this is, again, another tourist location. People come here to see this area because it is naturally, for mountain bikers and for hikers and for rock climbers, this is a pretty stellar area, because you could spend the whole day walking around the shade. And for anybody that knows, if they've ever traveled in Mexico, shade is definitely a commodity in this country. Yep, that's Estado de Mexico, and then that's the municipality of Jolotepec. The municipality of Jolotepec is Las Peñas de Dexcani, but Jolotepec is the nearest town. And the climbing here is pinnacles, as you can see on the left, and that's a freestanding tower. You can see the cobbles hanging out of this. When you look at it at first, you're looking at it, looks like solidified mud, and you're pretty much accurate because it's solidified ash. If you picture a volcano erupting, blowing ash and rocks into the sky, and as that whole cloud settles, that's what created this area, is the settling of that cloud, and then the surrounding dirt and everything washing away left these cobbles in their place. These routes are anywhere from 12 meters up to 30 meters tall. There's a few handful of multi-pitch climbs that are 2 pitches, but not too many people do the 2-pitch climbs here. For the most part, it's single pitch sport climbing. We do a lot of, for their guide service, we do a lot of climbing school here because of the single pitch overhanging nature. It really is a great place to go and learn how to sport climb safely. So when you fall off, similar to Kentucky, there's nothing really there to hit. Another picture on the left, you can see the person climbing, and then to the left of them, that's called Godzilla's egg, and that's where the hardest climbs in Mexico are, right on this formation. Those gentlemen that you see in this picture, there's my Jack Russell in the foreground, peanut butter, and then in the background you can see a gentleman on that donkey, and then you see the other gentleman on the horses, and that's quite common in this area. Again, these were all farmers. This was a Sunday, and they took their rest day, they got on their horses, and they rode up here to Las Peñas de Dexcani just to hang out for the day. On the right-hand side, you can see myself belaying my buddy Mark, and that's where the collection of 512s, 513s, and 514s are all on this wall right here. There's lots of hard climbing in this area, but as far as the overhanging hard stuff, this is where they filmed the 2010 Petzl rock trip, or a part of it. They filmed it right here in Halotepec, and these were the climbs that they were doing. It really is a very interesting area. Overhanging, volcanic, tough. It's almost like you're climbing in an indoor gym, but you're outside because you're latching a hold of cobbles. Some of the cobbles are no bigger than 2 fingers on a pinch. Other cobbles are as big as a Volkswagen bus that are all welded right into the wall. So it really is pretty amazing climbing. This is the National Park El Chico. I didn't mention this in the 3 areas that we guide, but I wanted to let people know that this is here, because as we go through, we talk about culture and things, and we're going to talk about rest day activities. This is the first national park in Mexico. National Park El Chico, those cliffs in the background and those spires that you see way in the back, that's up to 7 pitches tall, and that's the same rock as Halotepec. It is an absolutely magnificent place to go visit. And as far as I know, that's at 11,000 feet right there, 10 to 11,000 feet again. This national park is the original national park in Mexico. And that's, again, not so far away. That's in the Sierra Gordas. Restaurants. Now we're going to come into the good, after the climbing, I wanted to cover these restaurants. That's a good friend of mine's restaurant in my town. That's a Brazilian steakhouse. Underneath it, right behind those payphones, which I think are funny because who has payphones anymore, but right behind those payphones, that's a coffee shop. And this gives you a little idea of the town that I live in. It's a very beautiful town. That Brazilian steakhouse is pretty much the norm. When people come into town from climbing, we go there for dinner the first night, or every night, depending on how people feel, because it's very, very upscale restaurant. It's delicious food. And the owners are always there, and they're always willing to come and hang out and talk to you about where you're from and what you're doing there, and if you're having a good time. In Bernal, Piave, there's the monolith in the background, Arayan. That's an Italian restaurant, Piave, and that gentleman's from the Dolomites, and he's full on like Italian gentleman from the Dolomites. His whole place is filled with pictures of that part of the world. Not that he was ever a rock climber, but he certainly was from that area. And the Italian food there is magnificent. Ariane is a German gentleman that runs a Mexican restaurant, and that is a world-class Mexican restaurant. It's typical of that part of Mexico, and it's really, really delicious food. Rock climbing, that's what this webinar is about. I can talk about rock climbing day in and day out, because there's so many different places, so many beautiful places out there to talk about, and everybody trades stories. After the rock climbing, after we get done climbing, what's nice about these areas is that you have beautiful towns and really good food on the cheap. You can go on to Piave, you can have a full dinner with drinks, get done eating, and maybe spend 20, at max $20 American dollars, eat at Piave, and you're living like a king. Where I come from in the United States, you won't even get a couple beers for the $20, let alone the food that goes along with it. Really, a very delicious restaurant. Maison de la Roca, they have their own specialty beers here. That, again, if you look inside that door, it's just a really nice restaurants, nice places to go. These are very family-friendly towns. What differs between the north and the south of Mexico is that in the north, when you're rock climbing, beautiful climbing in the north really is, I spent a lot of time in the Potrero. If you go there and you're climbing and you see my name in that guidebook on routes, they're going to be really good routes. I took a lot of time to set up beautiful climbs there. But after the climbing's done, you have very limited options on what you're going to do. And to bring a family to the Potrero, it's really, really hard. I guided there for years. I did have families come in, and I always tried my best to get people to do things, outside of the climbing realm. And there's our gorditas. That's right outside the airport. When you leave the airport, you make a left to go to Bernal. There's 3 restaurants on the right, and that right there is a buffet gordita place. They put it all together. You just walk in and point at things. They give it to you in and out the door in like 2 minutes flat. If you spend $4 there, you walk out full, and this is, the best $4 you could possibly spend. This is in Bernal, lady Lucia. I used to go there quite frequently. She's making gorditas there as well, and everything's made fresh. They're really delicious food. Now that's on the cheap. The other restaurants a little more expensive. Here you can get away with spending, $3-4 and walking out of there full. Pastel. Yep, I love my desserts. Lots and lots of pastel. Lots of pastelerias. Lots of cake places. Lots of places where you can buy all sorts of dessert items. Rest day activities in central Mexico. We'll get into that. We're 52 minutes in. I'm right on time. Nevado de Toluca. That right there is a national park. That's outside of Toluca, Mexico. And that is looking down into the rim of a crater of a volcano. That's at 14,000 feet right there. Really beautiful area. To do things besides climbing, eating, what are you going to do on your rest days? Where I live in Mexico, we have the volcanoes as well. To go to this volcano and to hike there, you can do the rim traverse. Nevado de Toluca has their own rim traverse. It takes a whole day. Is that a rest day? Not exactly, not for me. I would need a rest day from my rest day. But to go up there and to be able to get up to the rim of the crater and look down and see the lake of the sun and of the moon, it really is quite special if you've never been to a volcano before. That right there is in the Sierra Gordas. This is something else I wanted to talk about, rest days. As I had spoke before, is that in Mexico, when you go into the Sierra Gordas, the eastern side of these mountains is all rainforest. And here is another place, Tolantongo, and that is mineral water at 72 degrees. It comes out of the ground, it's a volcanic flow, and this place is absolutely gorgeous. For people who want to bring families down or want to take rest days, I point them in this direction because there's so much to see and so much to do on your rest days with nice hotels in between. And it's just, it's a really, this is what draws me to living in this part of Mexico. And that's Valle de Bravo and paragliding. People who paraglide, it really is a nice place to go. It's world class because they do cross-country paragliding there. You can take off in one place and land miles and miles and miles away because of the way that the wind forms. So paragliding in Valle de Bravo, like I said, to get there is not a huge jump for a rest day. So you drive out after you get done climbing, and then you can arrive there, and then you could spend your rest days there. Dirt bike riding. I also have a dirt bike touring business. So not only am I a rock climber, but we do the dirt bike thing. People who come down and ride dirt bikes, I can take them out rock climbing, but not a lot of the times when people come down rock climbing, can I set them on one of those dirt bikes? Because if you ask somebody if they know how to ride, that's either a yes or a no answer. And if somebody says they don't ride, that would not be something that you'd want to put them on top of. But people who do know how to ride, riding dirt bikes in my area is wonderful because you can leave my house and go in any direction in 8 hours in any direction and never cross the same trail twice. Excellent. So here we're coming towards the end, 55 minutes, beautiful. The local culture in my, and oh, this is the picture on the left was taken up the top of Peña de Ñado, and that draft horse in the background, his name is Tiny, and that was the biggest horse I'd ever seen in my life. I had never seen anything that big. I mean, I'm standing where he's standing, he's kind of standing in a hole. But when that horse stood right next to me, his head was far above mine. I had never seen a horse that big. And they, these cowboys all rode up there on their rest day to, just to come up to the summit the same way that we did. My buddy Rob and I hiked up there that day. Yeah, lots of local culture in my town. You can visit the nearby Pueblo Mágicos, Bernal, Aculco, San Miguel de Allende is north of us. Mineral del Chico is the national park. This Valle de Bravo, there's places all around us that not only are beautiful in their own right for the town, but the surrounding areas because of the altitude. And artisanal shops, there's no end. The pyramids that are east of Mexico City, we have hot springs all around us because it's all volcanic. Monarch butterflies, they have their migratory path right through where I live. So if people want to go see the butterflies, we tell them, the closest areas to do that. There's caves near us. Some of the largest sinkholes in all of Latin America are right near where I live. And then, of course, in my town with the local cheeses, the ice cream, and the restaurants. It really is, like I said, there's not only lots of stellar rock climbing, but there's also wonderful things to do when you're not. There's the three areas. Bernal, Las Peñas de Dexcani, and Cascadas de Aculco. And I hope that, I've portrayed, that brought forth enough of this to, pique interest in these areas. They are wonderful. And the best part about it is that in a trip, you can hit three different completely different areas in one foul swoop. The big wall of Bernal, because it takes all day to climb that monolith. Las Peñas de Dexcani, which is in that private reserve, and then the crack climbing near my house at La Cascadas de la Concepcion. And then we can go into the trip duration. Most people come down as a vacation. They take 7 days. Here with COVID, we're doing, book 4 days of climbing, which is the three different areas, then a day of doing the big wall, because usually in Bernal, the first day we'll go out and do single pitch cragging to get everybody up to speed. And then you get 1 day free. So if people book 4, I take people out for the extra day in my town to go crack climbing. Best time of year to climb, it's all year. We're always at 75 degrees. When it gets to 80 degrees in my town, people think it's a heat wave and everybody runs for cover. The way we price it out is $370 per day per guide, and that's up to 4 people. So 4 people divided by 370 is like $92 per person per day. The only caveat to that is if we're doing the big wall, it's only 1 guide per 2 clients. We can't be pulling 4 people up a full day climb. That would be pretty tough for everybody, for the climbers as well as the guides. What's included is the rock climbing guides, full day climbing, whatever itinerary you guys want to do. We have all the gear. We have the shoes, we have the harnesses, we have everything, you need to have a good time. All you really have to do is fly in. What's not included is the transportation. I usually push people towards the, $90 rental car for a week. If people don't want to rent a car for a week at the airport, that's okay. We can set up transportation, we can. Accommodations, I get people into hotels, Airbnbs. I help everybody set that stuff up. Everybody has their own idea of what they want. And then meals and snacks, only because we have vegans, vegetarians, we have carnivores, people who come in, they all have their idea. My friends, they come in, all they want to do is eat gorditas 3 meals a day. Other friends of mine come in, they want to go over to the Brazilian steakhouse in my town, and they want to eat their 3 meals a day. So for us, it just makes it easier if everybody just gets to pick their own adventure when it comes to restaurants and things like that. But we set it all up for people. They're coming in, you want us to get you in a really nice 4-star hotel? No problem at all. I know where they are. I know the people who own them. That's it. So now we're into the question and answer session. Look at that. 1 hour and 20 seconds right on the button. So you want to take over? How do we want to do the question and answer session?
Yes, you can stop sharing so people actually can see us.
Okay, stop share. Right there.
Okay. That was great, Simon. Thank you so much for taking the time to share your knowledge and amazing photos with everyone. Now we have some time left for the questions. So let's just go and start with that. Okay, so we have a question. Is there a season that is better or worse to go?
Well, not really. The better season for people to go, I would say, is anywhere between November and April. And the only reason I say that is because climbing closes up in the north. Here at the Gunks, where I am right now, We're going to have about another 2 weeks, maybe 3 weeks, and the weather once we come into Halloween and such, the weather gets really bad here. Toronto, Canada, those people who are in Toronto or Quebec in that area, Montreal, their season's already coming to an end. When I say about a season being better by us, it's 75 degrees every day. But people come more in the wintertime because they don't have any climbing to do at their house where they're at. So they just come and visit us.
Okay, so we have another question, which is very similar. Would late May be a good time for crag climbing in Aculco? So the answer is yes. Anytime.
Yep, exactly. We get started early. We get started at 8:30 in the morning. We get done by 4 o'clock in the afternoon. So when you start hearing the thunder booming in the background and people just they kind of look over their shoulder like, what is that? I'm like, that's time to go. That's when it's going to rain, it's going to rain. And whether we go out there by taxi or take my van out or the truck out, however we get out there, we want to make sure that you're sitting in the car by the time that rain starts, because it only goes for about half an hour, but it rains very hard. When the rain finally gets over the mountains and it rains on us, it comes down in torrents.
Okay, does it rain much during the whole year in?
Yep, rainy season. Exactly. April right through to September, it rains every day, right from between 4:30 and 6. Usually right at 4:30. You can almost set your clock to the thunder showers. You can hear them every day around 4:30. You start hearing the banging in the background, and that's your cue to wrap it up and get out.
Okay. Is there much there in the moderate grades, 5.5 to 5.9? I'm not sure about which location is this, so you can maybe cover all of them.
So over in Bernal, which is the monolith, my buddy and I, my main guide, Carlos, and I have bolted multiple different sectors that have moderates. So 5.5s, 5.6s, 5.7s, 5.8s. We have multi-pitches that are 5.6 and 5.7, 5.8. So not only do we have single pitch climbs in Bernal that are moderates, we also have multi-pitch climbs. In Aculco, I can't lie, there's like 1.5.6, there's 1.5.7. The 5.8 feels harder than 5.8. Then pretty much everything else is 5.10. But that's okay, because you're on a top rope and it's crack climbing and there's always learning to be had. In Jalotepec, there are 5.6, 5.7s, 5.8s, and lots of 5.9s. So there's a whole wall actually of 5.9 and 5.10 minus in Jalotepec. So there's lots of moderates there as well.
Great. Okay, next one. How is this part of Mexico in terms of safety?
Beautiful question. I knew that was going to come up in the question and answer session. So I really appreciate that question. And I don't want to get too deep into it, but there's reasons why I moved out of the north and I moved down to central Mexico. And the beauty of 2021 and having a search engine is that you can put in your search engine like, why is Querétaro safe? Like that's a good little keyword thing. I've never really heard of any crime anywhere near us. Now the Pueblo Mágicos, like my town in Bernal, to keep that status, you have to have 24-hour police, and the police are stationed at the edge of town, and they have to have certain criteria that meet the Magic Town status. Beyond that, I just don't think there's problems there, because who really wants to mess with farmers? I mean, what are you going to take from a farmer? His sheep? Like in the north, it's because people are going to the border with the drugs, because the border cities, like when I drive through Laredo, Texas, and the Nuevo Laredo, people are so freaked out that now the police in Nuevo Laredo will meet you right at the aduana, which is where you get your customs, all your stuff to enter, your permit for 6 months being in there as far as your tourism permit if you're driving. And the police there will actually meet you and escort you out to the pay road. And again, people don't get into trouble on the pay road, because if you're a criminal, you're not going to pay to be on the road to rob people. They'll get you on the free roads. As far as where I live, which is 11 hours south of there, now it's 14 hours south of the border, I just don't think there's crime there, because there's just nobody doing drugs. the towns aren't really drinking towns. Like when friends of mine come to my town and they want to step out for dinner, and I tell them at 9 o'clock at night, it pretty much wraps up. There really isn't much going on after 9 o'clock at night because people have to get up in the morning. So 10 o'clock is considered to be late. And there are younger folks in town that'll be out in the bar there in town, the restaurant slash bar, and they'll be hanging out. But as far as like problems, my town in Aculco, we have the police force in town that gets paid well because it's a magic town and it's a wealthy town. And then we have the federal police, which are now the National Guard, because they changed their vehicles. I'm not sure what else changed, but it's just vehicle color, the same people. And they stay in the hotels in my town. And the reason why the National Guard stay in my town is because it's a beautiful town and they want to hang out there too. And then we also have the military that comes in. So we have the army that comes through because we have a market there, an enclosed market that has all your vegetables, all your meats, anything you could possibly need is in the town market, which is 2 floors. And the military comes in to stock up all their supplies. So I think that the reason why these towns, my town especially, is because, I don't know why anybody coming to town cause trouble because there's nothing really there to get. There's nothing there to be had. Querétaro in general is a very safe city. And I think, I keep Googling it and I tell people to Google it and we're trying to track it down why. But I would say just because it's off the beaten path and there's nothing really there. There's rock climbing and there's a lot of farming.
Great. Thank you for your answer. Next one. How do visitors deal with elevation acclimatization?
Well, I can't lie. I forget that we're like 10,000 feet. So people come in the first day and we start marching up to a little multi-pitch because sometimes people come right into town and they're like, let's go do one of the longer climbs. And when we take off, I take off up the trail and then I look behind me and I'm like, looking behind me. I'm like, where is everybody? And it takes me a couple seconds to remember that there is an elevation difference there. So you just slow down and, with the approach, you just take your time on the approach, which is all 10 minutes, so it really isn't a very long approach. For Bernal, if you're going around the monolith, it's anywhere from 10 minutes to 25 minutes if you're going around to the north side. But the weather's cool, it's 75 degrees for a high. So we just, you get acclimated pretty fast.
Okay. Next one. How easy is to go and take a couple of rest days in Guanajuato on a climbing trip to these areas?
It's a really good question because all depending on how people want to get there. If you wanted to go to Guanajuato or other areas, what you would do is you would get on a bus in any of the towns. I would say Querétaro as a major bus station, and you go in and you take one of the 9 o'clock leaving buses, and you take what's called the presidential, and they call it that because they have seats that fold out into beds, and you get on that in the evening and you wake up in whatever destination you want. And it really is pretty wonderful, and it's cheap. To go from across Mexico, it costs you on average like $45 to cross the whole country. So you can go anywhere you want and you can do it in style because their buses are not like they are in the United States. The buses there are my major form of transportation. You pay a little bit more, and I've slept in those buses before when I've traveled doing my paperwork for my business, when I had to go between cities to become legal in Mexico to run my guide service. So I understand exactly how comfortable they are because I passed out and I missed my stop in Querétaro and I woke up driving farther south in Mexico, and I just begged the guy to stop the bus on the side of the highway so I could jump out and then just walk because I had to work the next day. And I'm like, I cannot go to Leon. I said, I can't. You have to stop this bus. And he goes, I can't. Well, they have tracking on it, and they'll know if we stop. I'm like, all right, slow down to like 5 miles an hour, and I'll jump out. And the guy's like, are you crazy? I'm like, just slow down to 5 miles an hour. So that tells you how comfortable those seats are, because when I woke up, I almost had a mental breakdown when I realized that I was headed to another part of Mexico. Luckily, I was going south and it was just right near the exit where I had to get off anyway. So he opened up the door and I jumped out and started running down the on-ramp. So, it is pretty easy to travel around Mexico.
Okay. Is there a local climbing community?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, definitely. Querétaro. So the north side of the mountain, there's a campground there. It's a campground. It's ecotourism. It's called Chichido. And Chichido is owned by a family that is protecting that area for the future. And they're eco-centric. They're very focused on making the place better. And from Querétaro, it's only 35 minutes from Querétaro, maybe 50 minutes, depending on where you're coming from in the city. And it's a beautiful place to hang out. And there's lots of people there that come from the climbing community there.
Okay. Is it as dirty as El Potrero Chico?
If I could tell you how many bags of garbage I removed in the Potrero. It's funny you would say that. Yep, I am the original person that got the climbers together and cleaned up the garbage there. Year after year after year, I used to buy all the garbage bags and we used to clean up. No, there's something different about the culture in the South. I don't know what it is. I don't know why, but I had a house inside the Potrero. It was Los Pirules, and I had that house for 15 years. And in those 15 years, I can't tell you how many bags of garbage that we pulled out of there. Where I live now, it's very rare that you see people throwing garbage on the ground. Culturally different. In my town, in Aculco, you won't see any garbage. In Bernal, the same way. There's just something different.
Okay. How difficult is to get around in general with only high school level Spanish skills?
Shocked at how much you actually remember, because people say they haven't practiced their Spanish, their Espanol since they were in high school. And as soon as we get into town and I start talking to somebody or somebody asks a question or somebody needs something, I just step on out because I'm a very quiet guide. When I'm guiding rock, when people are climbing, I don't really say a whole lot unless they're having a major problem because they're learning how to fish. I'm not going to give them the fish. And when we go into town and people start talking, I just look at them and I give them the blank stare. And then the people who said they don't remember any of their Espanol, all of a sudden start whipping out verbs that I didn't even know even existed. And I'm like, I thought you said you didn't know any Espanol. And then they look at me and they're like, I totally forgot that I even knew that. And that's because they're closing one door and opening up another. So you close the door to English and you open up the door to Spanish, and it's all in there. It's all in your brain. You just haven't used it. Now, if you don't have any Espanol, you definitely have an iPhone or something else. And that is the ultimate communicator, because if you do have a problem, you could just start conjugating through your iPhone. But mostly in my town, I'm the only gringo in Aculco. In fact, I am known as the gringo of Aculco because there's no other ones there. And there's 3 people in my town that speak English. And anybody else that has any English because they worked in the US, they're always willing to try to practice with you, and they'll definitely help you with your Spanish. Baño, cerveza, there's all sorts of things that people do know. So you know how to get a beer and you know how to find the bathroom, and that's the 2 major things. And you just point at your mouth, and that pretty much is the international sign that you either can't speak or you're really hungry, one or the other. So everybody gets along.
Amazing. Can you explain what you meant by Magic Town?
Pueblo Mexico is a tourism status. I live in a tourist town. If you Google it, search engine Pueblo Mexico, you'll find out that these towns have something beautiful. Bernal has the monolith. We have the church in the town. Different places have something cultural heritage, or they have something that makes them so special that they get this Pueblo Mexico status, and that gives them money from the government, and that money from the government makes sure that whatever's there is preserved for the future. And they're all gorgeous towns. Yeah. To add on to that, and each one of these towns, like my town of Aculco, they have these big metal letters of the town, and people that go in Mexico who are tourists now, because they have a large middle class, they go from magic town to magic town, and they take pictures of their family out in front of the town names. It's really cool. So when I'm in town, I'm just hanging out, eat ice cream, or going over to the coffee shop, and I see families, I'll run over and I'll grab their phone because I want to get the whole family in the picture. Like, why should dad or mom be out of the picture when the rest of the family's in the picture? So I'll sit right there on the stairs in front of the church. And as families come in and they want to have pictures, I just sit there and eat my ice cream. And I just take people's phone after phone after phone after phone. I just take pictures of the whole family in front of that, almost like a tour guide there.
Okay, we have one question I'm really happy Mary asked. Is the climbing community welcoming to women? And maybe you can also say about the clinic that you're having in December.
So there's actually specific groups in Mexico that are women climber specific groups, and they are very welcoming because there are a lot of very strong lady climbers in Mexico that are breaking barriers in all sorts of ways. As we all know, guy or girl, rock climbing doesn't matter. The only place that I've ever seen that being a girl in rock climbing is more difficult is the New River Gorge, because there's such huge moves in between, like big throws, and that sometimes just is physically impossible for women because they just don't have the reach. But other than that, in rock climbing, it doesn't matter if you're a guy or a girl. In Mexico, there's a huge contingent of strong female climbers. And there is on Instagram, there's Violeta, I forget what the heck the name of it actually is, Violeta, but it's actually a women specific Instagram that is for Beta Violeta. That's exactly what it is. And that's a great one to look up because it's all Mexican ladies getting together and supporting each other. As far as the guide service goes, we're doing an all female clinic in December, which I can somehow attach a link to. And it's women coming in supporting women. And we're doing sport climbing and how to stay safe when you're sport climbing from the ground up. Then we're doing anchor clinic for single pitch anchors on top of the cliffs and crack climbing. And then we're going back out to Lookback. We're going to do 3 areas again for the overhanging sport. And it's all ladies in the clinic and female guides. I'm going to be guiding as well, but we have professional female guides, and that's exactly what it's about. It's about women supporting each other and learning about our strengths and supporting our building the weaknesses.
Yes, if you're interested in the clinic or have any additional questions for Simon, you can send me an email directly, maya@57hours.com, and we will also send you the webinar recording, presentation, and some other resources with the clinic link as well to your email in the next few days. So you can always just respond to the email, and we can also connect you directly with Simon if you have any specific questions about this area. So we have 2 more questions that we can answer, and we can then wrap this up. So first one is it credit card friendly there?
Absolutely. Yeah, everybody's got the terminals. You know, now as far as getting pesos in my town, you can go to Banco Azteca and change dollars for pesos in my town. In Bernal, they have the money machines where you put in your card and it spits out the money. And then restaurants, they all take credit card. And you have to think of this logically with Mexico and tourist towns and the way that banks work. They want everybody to be carrying plastic, so everybody accepts it.
Okay, and the last one, Christian is asking, have you ever climbed in Zacatecas? Any recommendations?
In Zacatecas, sure. I've climbed the trad climbing out in Zacatecas. That's outside the city. And that would be another email worthy response, because I had been to a bunch of the Cola de Caballo. I had been there. I had been bouldering at El Diente, and I had been to the trad climbing area. I've been to, actually, it's been a number of years, but I've been all around Zacatecas. Beautiful, beautiful, you know, really, again, high altitude, really clean atmosphere as far as the air, and quite the climbing community there as well.
Okay, well, I think that wraps everything up. Thank you so much to everyone who participated today. I hope you had a good time listening to Simon. Like Simon mentioned, you can book your climbing days with him at the 57 Hours website. I dropped the link in the chat to take you directly to those pages, but if you want more details on that, or if you want to me to connect you directly with Simon, we can just send an email to maya@57hours.com if that's easier for you. So thank you all again. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. We will send you a recording in the next few days. And Simon, any last words for our last attendees?
Thank you very much. I mean, I got to be honest with you, it's wonderful to have the opportunity to do this. And Maya, I really appreciate you helping me through everything. And I hope that I, brought forth a different view of Mexico for people, and that everybody can look forward to, seeing other places that are, new destinations.
That's it. And have a great rest of your day. Goodbye.
Thank you very much.